What if Richtofen was born with element 115? From the moment Edward Richtofen understood what the ether truly was, he no longer saw himself as human. Other children feared the dark. Richtofen stepped into it. He was born different, though no one around him had the language to explain it. His parents believed he was merely unusual at first. Quiet. Watchful. Too intelligent for his age. He spoke less than other children, but when he did speak, adults often found themselves unsettled by him. There was something in his eyes. A cold awareness. As if he was not discovering the world, but judging it. When Richtofen was only 5 years old, his mother found him standing alone in his bedroom in the middle of the night. The window was shut, yet the curtains moved as though caught in a powerful wind. His toys floated around him in slow circles. The wooden floorboards trembled beneath his bare feet. His mother froze in the doorway. "Edward," she whispered. Richtofen turned his head slightly, not frightened, not confused, only annoyed that he had been interrupted. Behind him, the air split open. A thin purple fracture appeared in the center of the room, humming with impossible energy. It widened for only a moment, revealing a place beyond the world. A strange endless space of shifting light, broken structures, and distant shapes moving in silence. His mother screamed. The portal snapped shut. The toys dropped to the floor. Richtofen looked at her with calm disappointment. "You should not have come in," he said. His mother backed away from him, one hand covering her mouth. "What are you?" Richtofen looked down at his own hands, watching faint purple sparks crawl over his fingers. "I do not know yet," he answered. "But I think I am more than you." From that night onward, the house changed. His parents tried to pretend nothing had happened, but fear had already entered the walls. Servants whispered about him. Doctors were brought in. Priests were called. Scholars examined him. None of them understood what they were looking at. One doctor leaned close to him with a small light, trying to inspect his eyes. "Edward, do you hear voices?" Richtofen smiled. "Do you?" The doctor paused. Richtofen tilted his head. "They are speaking now. They do not like you." The man stepped back, pale. His father grew angry with him more than afraid. He did not like things he could not control, and Edward Richtofen was something no father, doctor, or priest could command. One evening, after another strange incident left the mirrors in the house cracked from the inside, his father dragged him into the study. "You will stop this," his father said, slamming the door behind them. "Do you understand me?" Richtofen stood in the center of the room, small, silent, and unmoved. His father pointed at him. "You are a child. You will obey your father." For a moment, the room was still. Then the fire in the fireplace turned purple. Richtofen slowly looked up. "I have been listening to things older than this world," he said softly. "And none of them speak to me with such arrogance." His father's anger faltered. The shadows in the room stretched unnaturally across the walls. The bookshelves groaned. Somewhere behind them, voices whispered from a place no human should have heard. Richtofen took one step closer. "You are my father by blood," he said. "But that means very little." His father tried to speak, but no words came out. Richtofen raised one hand, and a small portal opened beside him. A cold wind rushed from it, carrying distant screams. "I will stop," Richtofen said, smiling faintly. "When I am finished." By the age of 7, the portals were no longer accidents. He could open them whenever he wished. Thin fractures in the air shimmered like broken glass. At first, he only observed them. He would sit alone for hours, staring into the ether as if watching a performance made only for him. The world beyond the portal was vast and impossible, filled with broken landscapes, floating stone, twisted pathways, and creatures that did not move like anything born on Earth. They watched him. And then, slowly, they began to listen. The first creature he controlled was small, barely more than a shadow with claws. It crawled near the portal one night, its body twitching as if unsure whether to cross into his world. Richtofen leaned forward. "Come here." The creature froze. Its glowing eyes focused on him. "Come," Richtofen repeated. It obeyed. It crawled through the portal and lowered itself at his feet. Richtofen studied it like a child might study an insect. He was not afraid of it. He was fascinated. "What are you?" he asked. The creature made a sound like bones grinding together. Richtofen smiled. "No matter. You listen. That is enough." He kept it hidden for 3 days before one of the servants discovered it in the cellar. The woman dropped her lantern and screamed. Richtofen arrived moments later, walking calmly down the stairs. The creature crouched in the corner, waiting for his command. The servant pointed at it, shaking. "Monster! Monster!" Richtofen looked at her, then at the creature. "No," he said. "Pet!" The servant tried to run. Richtofen raised 2 fingers. The cellar door slammed shut. She turned back toward him, crying, "Please, young master. Please let me go." Richtofen stared at her for a long moment. He did not look cruel yet. Only curious. "Fear makes people honest," he said. "Tell me. Do you think I am a monster too?" The servant trembled. "No." Richtofen smiled. "You are lying." The creature hissed. Richtofen let the silence last just long enough for the woman to understand that her life rested entirely on his mood. Then he lowered his hand, and the door opened. "Leave," he said. "And do not speak of what you saw." She ran. But of course, she did speak. Rumors spread. People in nearby towns began whispering about the Richtofen child. Animals avoided the estate. Visitors stopped coming. Servants quit or disappeared. Those who stayed learned one rule above all others. Do not enter Edward's room after dark. Richtofen continued growing stronger. Every year, the ether answered him more easily. He learned that it was not simply another place. It was layered beneath reality like a hidden nervous system. Through it, he could touch the world from behind the curtain. He could bend small events, push thoughts, pull objects, distort distance. He could listen through walls without standing near them. He could see through portals no bigger than a coin. He could speak into dreams. And sometimes, when someone angered him, he could let the ether speak back. At 13, Richtofen was sent to study under private tutors, though most did not last long. Some quit because he made them uncomfortable. Some because they felt watched when they were alone. Others because he knew things he should not have known. One tutor, a strict old man named Herr Fogel, tried to discipline him during a lesson on human history. "You are intelligent, Edward," Fogel said, striking the desk with a ruler. "But intelligence means nothing without humility." Richtofen looked up from his book. Humility is what weak people praise when they have no power. Fogel's face tightened. "You arrogant boy." Richtofen closed the book. "Tell me, Herr Fogel. Why should I be humble?" "Because every man is mortal." Richtofen stood. The lamps flickered. Fogel watched him carefully. Richtofen smiled. "Then perhaps I am not every man." Fogel raised the ruler, but before he could strike, a portal opened behind him. The room filled with purple light. The old tutor turned slowly, his face losing all color as he saw the impossible landscape beyond. Richtofen stepped beside him. "Look closely," he whispered. "That is where your rules end." Something moved on the other side of the portal. Huge. Slow. Aware. Fogel dropped the ruler. Richtofen laughed quietly. After that, no tutor raised a hand to him again. By the time he reached adulthood, Richtofen had already learned the most important truth about mankind. People were easy to control. Some wanted money. Some wanted safety. Some wanted power. Some simply wanted to believe they were making their own choices. Richtofen gave each person exactly enough to make them useful. His rise began quietly. Investments that should have failed succeeded. Rivals suffered sudden breakdowns. Business enemies made foolish decisions at precisely the wrong time. A factory owner who refused him woke one morning to find every machine in his building turned inside out, metal twisted like soft flesh. A banker who mocked him vanished from a locked room, only to return 3 days later babbling about purple skies and dead voices. Richtofen became rich. Then richer. Then untouchable. He attended grand gatherings where powerful men laughed, drank, and boasted about their influence. They saw him as another wealthy eccentric, a strange but brilliant man with unusual eyes and a cold smile. They did not understand that he was studying them. At one such gathering, a politician approached him with false warmth. "Dr. Richtofen," the man said, offering his hand. "I hear your companies are expanding again." Richtofen shook his hand with polite disinterest. "They are. Impressive. Very impressive. Men like you could shape the future of this country." Richtofen looked at him. "Only this country?" The politician laughed, thinking it was a joke. Richtofen did not. A woman nearby, dressed in expensive silk, watched him with fascination. "You speak as though the world is already yours," she said. Richtofen turned to her. "No," he said. "Not yet." There was something about the way he said it that made the conversation around them fade. The woman tried to smile. "And when it is?" Richtofen looked past her, toward the window, where the city lights glittered below. "Then perhaps I will finally rest." But he knew that was not true. Rest was not what he wanted. Control was. The world became predictable to him. Money moved where he wanted it. People bent when pressured. Governments were slower than corporations but just as vulnerable. Every system had a weakness. Every leader had fear. Every army needed orders. Every nation believed itself permanent. Richtofen knew better. Humanity was fragile. A collection of frightened creatures pretending their walls, flags, and weapons meant something. He watched them from mansions, laboratories, boardrooms, and private chambers. He watched them lie to each other. He watched them beg for power. He watched them build empires out of paper and pride. And slowly, he grew bored. The world had nothing left to teach him. So he returned to the only thing that still stirred his curiosity. The ether. For years, Richtofen had opened portals into it. Now he wanted to pull pieces of it into reality. His first attempts were small. A stone that did not belong to Earth. A plant that grew without soil. A fragment of metal that whispered when touched. These objects should not have existed in the physical world, but under his command, they remained. Then he went further. He began anchoring space itself. He chose the highest place he could reach, a frozen peak above the clouds, where the air was thin and no ordinary man could survive for long. There, with the world far below him, Richtofen opened the largest portal he had ever created. The mountain shook. The sky split. Purple light poured across the snow. From the ether, he pulled stone, iron, glass, and impossible machinery. Piece by piece, reality obeyed him. Towers rose from nothing. Walls formed in the air and slammed into place. Bridges extended over empty space. Massive doors shaped themselves from black metal covered in glowing symbols. A castle began to form. Not built by human hands. Built by will. For months, workers were brought to the mountain, though many did not understand why. Engineers, architects, servants, armed guards, and prisoners all stood beneath the shadow of the impossible structure, trying to make sense of what their master was creating. One engineer, a nervous man named Adler, approached Richtofen while the outer wall was still forming. "Doctor, Adler said, staring up at the twisting towers. This structure cannot support itself. The weight alone should collapse the entire eastern side. Richtofen did not look at him. Should? Adler swallowed. Yes. By every known law, it should. Richtofen smiled. Then it is fortunate I do not require permission from known laws. Adler hesitated. With respect, sir, what exactly is this place meant to be? Richtofen turned toward him slowly. A throne above the world. The engineer gave a weak laugh, thinking again that it was some strange joke. Richtofen's eyes hardened. Adler stopped laughing. When the castle was completed, it did not look entirely real. Its towers stretched too high. Its walls shifted subtly when no one was watching. Some corridors led to rooms that had not existed the day before. Some doors opened into other parts of the castle. Others opened into screaming purple voids. Windows were not windows at all. They were stable portals. Each one showed a different part of the world. A battlefield. A palace. A city street. A church. A child sleeping in bed. Richtofen could see everything from his castle. And through the ether, everything could eventually be touched. The servants feared the place. Guards avoided the lower halls. Several workers disappeared during construction and were never found. Others returned changed, speaking in strange voices or staring at empty corners as if something stood there. Richtofen did not care. A castle needed walls. A god needed witnesses. At the center of the castle was the throne room. It was massive, cold, and alive with energy. Purple light moved through the floor like veins beneath glass. The ceiling opened into a swirling view of the ether itself. At the far end, upon a raised platform, stood Richtofen's throne. When he first sat upon it, the entire castle responded. The walls hummed. The portals brightened. Far below, storms gathered around the mountain. Richtofen leaned back and looked through the largest window, watching the world beneath him. Cities were tiny from this height. Nations were invisible. Humanity seemed so small. So temporary. He rested his head against one hand and smiled. All of this, he murmured, his voice echoing across the chamber, and not one of them understands. A servant standing near the entrance trembled but forced herself to speak. Dr. Richtofen. His eyes moved toward her. She immediately regretted speaking. There are representatives waiting below, she said. From several governments. They demand to know what you are building here. Richtofen laughed softly. Demand? The servant lowered her gaze. Yes, sir. Richtofen stood and walked toward one of the portal windows. It showed the delegation waiting at the mountain base, surrounded by soldiers and machines. Men in uniforms. Men in coats. Men carrying documents, threats, and pride. He watched them for a moment. Then he raised his hand. A small portal opened behind the delegation. One soldier heard it first. He turned, raising his rifle. What is that? Another man stepped back. The portal widened. From within came a low, wet growl. Richtofen watched from above, smiling. The first zombie emerged slowly. Then another. Then 10. Then more. The soldiers opened fire. The undead fell, twitched, and rose again. Screams filled the mountain pass. In the throne room, the servant covered her mouth in horror. Richtofen glanced at her. Do not look so frightened, he said. They came seeking answers. Below, the delegation was torn apart. Richtofen turned back to the portal window. And now they have received one. That was the first public act of his reign. The world did not yet understand it as a declaration of war. But it was. News spread quickly, though no report told the same story twice. Some claimed there had been an avalanche. Others blamed a weapons test. A few survivors spoke of corpses walking through purple light, but governments buried those accounts as quickly as they appeared. Richtofen watched the cover-ups with amusement. They hide the truth from their own people, he said one evening, seated at his throne. Even when the truth is already clawing at the door. Beside him stood one of his earliest creations, a zombie bound more deeply to his will than the others. It was not intelligent in a human sense, but it understood command. Richtofen called it his hound, though it had once been a man. You hear them, yes? Richtofen asked it. The creature growled. Richtofen's smile widened. They are afraid. But fear alone is boring. We must give them purpose. He lifted his hand. Across the world, portals began to open. Not all at once. Richtofen wanted the world to understand slowly. First, a village vanished in the night. Then a military convoy was found overturned, its soldiers missing. Then a city hospital went dark. A police officer in Berlin answered a call about screaming in an alley. When he arrived, he found a man covered in blood standing motionless under a broken street lamp. Sir, the officer called, raising his weapon. Step away from the body. The man turned. His eyes glowed purple. The officer froze. What the hell? The corpse at the man's feet began to move. Then another shape emerged from the darkness. Then another. The officer fired until his weapon clicked empty. His final transmission was heard across the local channel. They are not dying. They are not dying. In London, a mother pulled her child through a crowd as sirens screamed across the city. People pushed against one another, desperate to get away from the smoke rising behind them. A man shouted from the street, "They're coming through the walls." Someone else screamed, "The dead are walking." The mother lifted her son into her arms and ran. Above the city, a purple tear opened in the clouds. For one brief second, people looked up and saw a castle silhouetted against impossible light. Then it vanished. In Moscow, soldiers held a barricade against a wave of undead moving through the snow. One commander shouted orders, his voice cracking from exhaustion. "Hold the line. Do not let them through." A young soldier beside him stared at the horde. "They do not stop, sir." The commander looked at him. "Then we do not stop either." The undead slammed into the barricade. The line broke before dawn. In Japan, Tokyo Mosoki stood in a ruined temple courtyard, surrounded by fallen bodies and burning wood. He had come seeking answers to visions that haunted him for weeks, visions of a man above the clouds, smiling as the dead consumed the earth. An old monk sat wounded against a cracked pillar, struggling to breathe. Tokyo knelt beside him. "Tell me what you saw." The monk's eyes moved toward the sky. "A throne," he whispered. "A man who believes himself divine." Tokyo's expression hardened. "Richtofen." The monk gripped his wrist. "He is not merely commanding the dead. He is opening a wound between worlds. If it grows, our world will no longer be our own." Tokyo looked toward the smoke rising beyond the temple gates. "Then the wound must be closed." The monk shook his head weakly. "No. First, the hand holding it open must be severed." Tokyo stood slowly. In America, Tank Dempsey was already fighting. He had been part of a military response team sent to contain one of the earliest outbreaks. The briefing had been vague. Chemical attack. Hostile infected. Possible foreign weapon. None of that survived first contact. Dempsey watched men he had trained with get dragged down by corpses that kept moving after taking bullets to the chest, legs, throat, and skull. He fought through a ruined town for 2 days before the chain of command collapsed entirely. By the third day, there were no orders left. Only survival. He kicked a zombie off a burning truck and drove his knife through its skull. "Stay down, freak bag." A wounded soldier crawled nearby, reaching toward him. "Dempsey." Dempsey grabbed him and pulled him behind cover. "Easy, kid. I got you." The soldier coughed blood. They said it was infection. But I saw him. Dempsey looked at him. Saw who? The soldier's eyes widened. A man in a castle. He was watching us. Laughing. Dempsey went silent. The soldier gripped his vest. He opened the sky. Dempsey looked up as thunder rolled overhead despite there being no storm. His jaw tightened. Then I guess we find the man in the castle. Far away, Nikolai Belinsky found his own answer in the snow. His unit had been sent to investigate a village that had stopped responding. They found the place silent, every door open, every window broken from the inside. The bodies were gone. The blood was not. One of Nikolai's comrades muttered, "This is not war." Nikolai looked around at the empty street. "No," he said. "War makes more sense than this." The first zombie stumbled from a house. Then another emerged from the church. Then the entire village seemed to wake up dead. The soldiers fired. Some screamed. Some ran. Nikolai stayed where he was, laughing bitterly as he reloaded. "Of course," he said. "Even death has decided to be annoying." By nightfall, he was the only one left. He sat against a broken wall, covered in blood that was not all his, holding a bottle he had taken from an abandoned cellar. Across the street, one of his dead comrades twitched and began to rise. Nikolai sighed. "Really? You too?" The corpse turned toward him, purple eyes glowing. Nikolai threw the empty bottle at its head. "I liked you better when you complained less." He stood, picked up his weapon, and fought his way into the dark. The world was breaking, but it was not yet defeated. Not completely. There were still people who resisted. Soldiers, survivors, doctors, monks, scientists, families, strangers. People who did not know the ether. People who did not understand element 115. People who had never heard the name Richtofen before the dead began tearing through their streets. And that amused him most of all. From his throne above the world, Richtofen watched humanity struggle. He watched Dempsey fight through fire. He watched Tokyo follow visions through ruined temples. He watched Nikolai survive battles that should have killed him. 3 men. 3 stubborn sparks in a world he intended to smother. Richtofen leaned forward, eyes bright with interest. "Well," he whispered. "What do we have here?" The portal before him shifted, showing each of them in turn. Dempsey, blooded but standing. Tokyo, silent and focused. Nikolai, wounded but laughing in defiance. For the first time in years, Richtofen felt something close to excitement. He raised one hand, and several zombies in the throne room turned toward him. "These ones are different," he said. "They do not break easily." The undead waited. Richtofen smiled. "Good." He stood, purple light crawling around his body like living lightning. "Let the rest of the world burn slowly. But these 3. His smile widened. "These 3 I want alive a little longer." Far below, the world continued to fall. But somewhere within the chaos, the first pieces of resistance were beginning to move toward one another. And Richtofen, sitting above the clouds in his impossible castle, watched them with the delight of a god who had finally found a game worth playing. What if Richtofen was born with element 115, Part 2? The world did not fall in one moment. It fell in pieces. A street first. Then a town. Then a city. Then a nation realized too late that the dead did not need sleep, food, fear, or mercy. Across the planet, people began to understand that this was not an illness. It was not a weapon released by accident. It was not something that could be contained behind walls or explained away by officials standing at podiums with trembling hands. Something was guiding them. The undead moved with purpose. They did not simply swarm the living at random. They attacked power stations. They overran hospitals. They blocked escape roads. they surrounded military bases before the soldiers inside even knew they were under siege. It was strategy. Cruel, patient strategy. And high above the clouds, in the castle built from the bones of the ether itself, Edward Richtofen watched it all unfold with quiet pleasure. He sat upon his throne, one leg crossed over the other, his gloved fingers resting against his cheek as the portal windows around him shifted from country to country. Each one showed a different form of desperation. A family hiding beneath a collapsed stairwell. A soldier dragging his wounded friend through smoke. A priest standing before a locked church door, refusing to let the infected inside until the dead came through the stained glass behind him. Richtofen smiled. "Look at them," he said softly. "So small when the rules change." Behind him stood several of his creatures. Zombies in ruined military uniforms. Civilians with hollow faces. Twisted beings that had spent too long between the physical world and the ether, their bodies stretched and reshaped by energy no human mind was meant to endure. They waited for him. Everything waited for him. One of his servants, a pale woman named Elise, entered the throne room carrying a silver tray. She had served in the castle since its completion, though every day had taken more color from her face. She did not look at the portal windows anymore. She had learned that seeing too much of the world's suffering made sleep impossible. "My lord," she said quietly. Richtofen's eyes did not leave the visions before him. "My tea." "Yes." She approached carefully and placed the tray beside his throne. Her hands shook just enough for the cup to rattle against the saucer. Richtofen noticed. Of course he noticed. "You are afraid today, Elise." She went still. "I am sorry, my lord." "That was not an apology I requested." She lowered her head. "Yes. I am afraid." Richtofen finally looked at her. "Of me?" Elise hesitated. The creatures behind him growled softly, as if they understood the question. Richtofen raised a hand, and they fell silent. "Answer honestly," he said. "Dishonesty bores me." Elise swallowed. "Yes," she whispered. "Of you." Richtofen studied her face. Then he laughed quietly. "Good. Fear is often the last honest emotion humans have left." Elise did not move. Richtofen picked up the cup and took a slow sip. "Tell me, Elise. Do you think I am cruel?" The question hung in the throne room like a blade. Elise's eyes moved toward one of the portal windows. In it, a city burned beneath a purple sky. People ran through the streets while the dead poured from alleys and broken buildings. "I think," she began, then stopped. Richtofen leaned forward slightly. "You think?" She forced herself to meet his eyes. "I think you have the power to stop it." His smile faded only slightly. "And that makes me cruel. It means you are choosing this." For a moment, there was no sound except the hum of the ether beneath the floor. The zombies behind him shifted. Elise's face went pale, but she did not take the words back. Richtofen set the cup down. "You misunderstand me," he said. "I am not destroying the world because I hate it." "Then why?" He turned back toward the burning city. "Because it is mine." Elise stared at him. Richtofen continued, his voice calm, almost gentle. "A sculptor does not hate the stone when he carves it. A surgeon does not hate the flesh when he cuts it open. A king does not hate the kingdom when he demands obedience." He looked at her again. "Humanity is disorder. Noise. Hunger. Pride. It builds cages and calls them nations. It builds graves and calls them history. I am giving it something it has never had." Elise whispered, "What?" Richtofen smiled. "Purpose." Far below, Dempsey moved through the ruins of an American city with a group of survivors at his back. The streets were choked with abandoned cars, burnt-out military vehicles, and bodies that no one had time to bury. Smoke drifted between buildings. Distant screams echoed from somewhere deeper in the city, though no one could tell whether they came from the living or the dead. Dempsey walked at the front, rifle raised, eyes scanning every window and alley. Behind him were 12 survivors. A nurse named Maria. A mechanic named Leon. 2 children, brother and sister, who had not spoken since Dempsey found them hiding inside a school bus. 3 soldiers from another unit who had lost contact with command. And several civilians who followed him because he seemed like the only man left who still knew how to move forward. Leon limped beside him, clutching a crowbar. "You really think there's a way out?" Dempsey didn't look back. "There's always a way out." That sounds like something people say before dying. Dempsey glanced at him. "You want the comforting lie or the useful truth?" Leon breathed hard. "Useful truth." Dempsey stopped at the corner of a ruined street and checked the intersection. "The truth is, we keep moving or we die here." Leon nodded slowly. "Yeah. That is not comforting." "Nope." A low groan rolled through the street. Everyone froze. Dempsey raised a fist. The group stopped instantly. Maria pulled the children behind an overturned ambulance. One of the soldiers aimed toward a broken storefront. Glass cracked under something heavy moving inside. A zombie stumbled into view. Then another. Then 5 more. Their eyes glowed purple. One of the civilians whispered, "Oh God." Dempsey tightened his grip on his rifle. "Quiet." The zombies turned their heads at the sound. For a moment, they only stared. Then, all at once, they charged. Dempsey opened fire. The first zombie's head snapped back and its body hit the ground. The second fell over it. The third kept coming even after bullets tore through its chest. "Headshots!" Dempsey shouted. "Aim for the head." The soldiers fired. Maria grabbed a drop pistol and shot one that came too close to the children. Leon swung his crowbar into another's jaw, knocking it sideways before Dempsey finished it off. More came from the storefront. Then from the alley. Then from beneath the wrecked cars. Dempsey cursed. "They're surrounding us." One of the soldiers panicked and backed into the open street. A zombie grabbed him from behind a bus and pulled him screaming through the broken window. Maria shouted, "We have to move." Dempsey looked down the street and saw them pouring from every direction. Not wandering. Not stumbling randomly. Closing in. He felt it again. The same feeling he had felt during the first outbreak. They were being watched. Dempsey looked up. For a split second, the clouds above the city twisted into a purple spiral. And there, barely visible through the storm, stood the silhouette of a castle. Dempsey's eyes narrowed. "You son of a bitch." The zombies rushed forward. Dempsey turned to the survivors. "Run!" Through the subway. The group sprinted down the street while Dempsey covered them. He fired until his magazine ran dry, then pulled his knife and drove it into the skull of a zombie that lunged at him from the side. He shoved it away and ran after the others. The subway entrance was half collapsed, but there was enough space to get through. Leon climbed down first, then helped the children. Maria followed, then the remaining soldiers. Dempsey reached the entrance last. A zombie grabbed his shoulder. He spun, slammed its head into the metal railing, and kicked it backward into the horde. Not today. He dropped into the darkness below. The subway tunnel smelled of smoke, blood, and wet concrete. The survivors moved quickly, guided by the weak glow of emergency lights. Somewhere above them, the dead screamed and clawed at the entrance. Maria caught up beside Dempsey. "You saw it too, didn't you?" Dempsey kept walking. "Saw what?" "The castle." He glanced at her. She held his stare. "I thought I was losing my mind," she said. "But you saw it." Dempsey was quiet for a moment. "Yeah. I saw it." "What is it?" He looked down the tunnel. "I don't know yet. Maria lowered her voice. And the man inside. Dempsey stopped. The group behind them went silent. Maria continued carefully. I saw him once. In a reflection. During the first attack at the hospital. He was standing behind me, but when I turned around, he wasn't there. Dempsey's expression darkened. What did he look like? Like a doctor. Like a rich man. Like someone enjoying himself. Dempsey looked away. The children stared at him from behind Leon. Dempsey knew that look. They wanted him to say everything was going to be fine. He couldn't. So he gave them something better. We're gonna find out who he is, Dempsey said. And then we're gonna make him regret ever looking down here. On the other side of the world, Takeo Mosoki traveled through a ruined countryside where the dead walked beneath falling ash. He was not alone. Several villagers followed him, survivors from the temple and nearby farms. They carried blades, hunting rifles, farming tools, and old family weapons pulled from dusty walls. They were frightened, but they trusted him because he did not panic. He moved through danger like a man who had already accepted death but refused to kneel before it. A young man named Hiro walked near him, gripping a spear with both hands. Takeo-sama, Hiro said, voice tense. Where are we going? Takeo looked toward the mountains in the distance. To find the source of the visions. The castle. Yes. Hiro swallowed. But how can we reach a castle in the sky? Takeo did not answer immediately. The truth was, he did not know. His visions came in fragments. Purple light. A throne. A laughing man. A mountain piercing the clouds. 3 paths crossing through blood and fire. And always, the same feeling. The world had been wounded. The dead were only the symptom. Richtofen was the blade. They came upon a village at sunset. At first, it seemed abandoned. Doors hung open. Smoke rose from cooking fires long neglected. A child's sandal lay in the dirt road. Wind moved through hanging prayer charms, making them click softly against one another. Takeo raised his hand. The survivors stopped. Hiro whispered, "Do you see something?" Takeo's eyes moved slowly across the village. "No." Hiro frowned. "Then why stop?" "Because I hear nothing." The silence was wrong. No birds. No insects. No crying. No movement. Takeo drew his sword. The others followed his example. A woman from the group whispered, "Maybe they fled." Takeo stepped forward. "Stay close." They moved through the village carefully. Inside one house, food still sat on the table. In another, blood stained the wall in a long, dragging mark leading toward the back door. Hiro turned pale. Then a voice called from inside the village shrine. "Help!" Everyone froze. The voice came again, weak and trembling. "Please, help me." Hiro stepped forward, but Takeo grabbed his arm. "No." "But someone is alive." Takeo listened. The voice repeated the exact same words with the exact same tone. "Please, help me." Takeo's eyes hardened. "That is not a survivor." The shrine doors burst open. A creature crawled out on long, twisted limbs, its body once human but warped by the ether. Faces seemed to press beneath its skin, mouths opening and closing without sound. Its eyes burned purple. Behind it came the villagers. All dead. All staring. Hiro stumbled back. "By the gods!" Takeo raised his sword. "Do not pray yet." The creature screamed, and the dead attacked. Takeo moved first. His blade cut through the nearest zombie's neck before it could reach him. Hiro thrust his spear into another's head. The survivors formed a rough circle, shouting in fear as the dead poured from houses, wells, and alleys. The twisted creature climbed onto the shrine roof, its head jerking unnaturally as if listening to orders from far away. Then it spoke. Not in its own voice. In Richtofen's. Tokyo Mosoki. Tokyo froze. The creature smiled with a mouth that was not meant to smile. Such discipline. Such honor. Such desperate little resistance. The survivors stared in horror. Hiro whispered, "It knows you." Tokyo stepped toward the creature. "Richtofen." The creature laughed. "Ah. You know my name. How flattering." Tokyo gripped his sword with both hands. "You hide behind corpses." "I command corpses," Richtofen's voice replied. "There is a difference." The creature tilted its head. "You have seen my throne, haven't you? You have seen what waits above the world." "I have seen enough." "No," the creature said. "You have seen only what I allowed." The dead pressed closer. Tokyo's voice remained steady. "Then allow this." He rushed forward. The creature lunged from the roof, claws extended. Tokyo slid beneath it, turning his blade upward. The sword carved through its chest, but the creature did not die. It twisted in midair and slammed him into the ground. Hiro shouted and charged, driving his spear into the creature's side. It shrieked. Tokyo rolled to his feet and struck again, this time cutting deep into its neck. Purple energy sprayed from the wound like fire. The creature staggered, still laughing in Richtofen's voice. "You cannot cut your way to heaven, samurai." Tokyo stepped closer. "I do not seek heaven." He drove his sword through the creature's skull. "I seek you." The creature collapsed. The remaining zombies suddenly lost coordination. Some stumbled. Others turned in circles as if confused. The survivors used the moment to finish them. When the last corpse fell, silence returned to the village. Hiro leaned on his spear, breathing hard. That thing spoke with his voice. Tokyo wiped his blade clean. "Yes. Then he knows where we are." Tokyo looked toward the darkening sky. He has always known. Hiro looked afraid. Tokyo sheathed his sword. "Good. Let him watch." Far to the north, Nikolai Belinsky walked through snow with 3 survivors he had picked up on the road. One was an old mechanic named Sergei. One was a young radio operator named Katya. The last was a prisoner in a torn uniform who refused to give his name, so Nikolai simply called him Rat. They had been moving for 2 days through frozen forests and dead villages, trying to reach an old military outpost that might still have supplies. Rat complained constantly. "My feet are freezing." Nikolai looked back at him. "Good. That means you still have feet." Sergei chuckled weakly. Katya walked with a radio strapped to her back, adjusting the signal every few minutes. "Still nothing," she said. "Only static." Nikolai took a drink from a dented flask. "Static is better than screaming." Katya gave him a tired look. "You say many comforting things." "I am very comforting man." Rat muttered, "You are insane." Nikolai smiled. "Yes. And yet here you are, following me." The forest opened into a small clearing. At the center stood a broken communications tower, half buried in snow. Beside it was the military outpost, its gates hanging open. Sergei exhaled. "There. We made it." Nikolai raised his weapon. "Do not sound happy yet." They entered cautiously. The outpost was silent. Inside the main building, they found overturned chairs, frozen blood, and walls covered in scratches. Katya moved to the radio equipment and began working quickly. "If the generator still functions, I might be able to transmit." Sergei checked the back room. "I will see what can be repaired." Rat hovered near the door. Nikolai noticed. "Thinking of running?" Rat glared at him. "Thinking of surviving?" "Try both." Very difficult, but rewarding. A sudden thud came from outside. Everyone stopped. Then another. Then another. Something heavy struck the main gate. Katia whispered, "Please tell me that is the wind." Nikolai went to the window and looked out. Shapes moved through the snow. Dozens. No. Hundreds. The dead emerged from the trees, their eyes glowing through the storm. Nikolai sighed. It is not wind. Rat backed away. How did they find us? Nikolai stared at the horde. Then he noticed something standing behind them. A figure in a torn officer's coat, taller than the others, its body wrapped in purple veins of energy. It lifted its head and looked directly at the window. Its mouth opened. Richtofen's voice came through the radio. Nikolai Belinsky. Katia screamed and stepped back from the equipment. Nikolai slowly turned toward the radio. The voice continued, amused and smooth. I wondered when you would become interesting. Nikolai walked to the table and picked up the microphone. Who is this? A soft laugh crackled through the speakers. Oh, come now. I think you know. Nikolai looked toward the window again. You are the castle man. I prefer visionary. Master of the ether. Architect of the new world. But castle man will do, for now. Nikolai grunted. You talk too much. Richtofen laughed louder. And you drink too much. Nikolai froze for just a second. Then his eyes narrowed. You watch us. I watch everything. Rat whispered, we're dead. Nikolai raised the microphone again. If you watch everything, then watch closely. He dropped the microphone, grabbed a grenade from a dead soldier's belt, and tossed it out the broken window. The explosion tore through the first wave of undead. Nikolai turned to the others. Now would be good time to repair generator. Sergei shouted from the back room, I am trying. The dead hit the building. Boards cracked. Glass shattered. Hands reached through windows. Nikolai fired into the doorway as zombies pushed inside. Rat, despite his fear, grabbed a rifle and joined him. Katia worked frantically at the radio, trying to force life back into the machine. Sergei yelled, generator is working, but not for long. Katia twisted the dial. Signal is open. I can transmit. Nikolai shot a zombie through the head and shouted, then say something useful. Katia grabbed the microphone. This is emergency broadcast from Northern Military Station. If anyone can hear us, the dead are moving with command structure. Repeat, they are being controlled. Source appears connected to purple energy phenomena and unidentified castle-like structure visible through atmospheric distortion. Static screamed through the speakers. Then another voice broke through. Rough. American. Say that again. Katia stared at the radio. Nikolai turned. Dempsey's voice crackled through. This is Tank Dempsey. Who the hell am I talking to? Nikolai grabbed the microphone. Someone having worse day than you. There was a pause. Then Dempsey replied, Buddy, I doubt that. Nikolai laughed despite himself. Good. You are funny. Maybe useful. Katia leaned closer. We have information. The dead are being controlled by a man named Richtofen. On the other end, Dempsey went silent. Then he said, yeah. We're looking for him too. Nikolai looked through the window as the horde pressed closer. Then look faster. Another signal suddenly cut across the frequency. Calm. Controlled. Japanese. This is Tokyo Mosoki. I heard the name Richtofen. Dempsey's voice returned. Who are you? A man who has seen his throne. Nikolai grinned. Ah. More friends. Tokyo's voice remained steady. We are not friends yet. Dempsey said, you fighting the dead? Yes. You hate the guy controlling them. Yes. Good enough for me. For the first time since the world began collapsing, the three men heard one another. Across different continents, through broken radios, ruined tunnels, burning villages, and frozen outposts, their paths connected. And far above them, in his castle, Richtofen heard it too. The portal windows shifted suddenly, showing Dempsey in the subway, Tokyo in the ruined village, and Nikolai at the outpost. Richtofen stood slowly. His smile disappeared. Not because he was afraid, but because the game had changed. Elise stood near the throne room entrance, watching him carefully. "My lord?" Richtofen raised a hand for silence. The three voices continued through the ether's echoes. Dempsey. Tokyo. Nikolai. Separate sparks becoming one flame. Richtofen's smile returned, slower this time. "Ah," he whispered. "There it is." He walked toward the center of the throne room. The floor beneath him glowed brighter with every step. They found each other. Elise dared to speak. "Is that bad?" Richtofen looked at her. For a moment, his expression was unreadable. Then he laughed. "No." He turned back toward the portal windows, eyes filled with dangerous delight. "No, Elise. This is wonderful." He lifted both hands. Across the world, the purple portals began to change. They did not simply open. They formed patterns. Lines of energy stretched unseen through the ether, connecting cities, villages, battlefields, and ruins. The dead began moving in new directions, not toward random survivors, but toward specific locations. Dempsey's subway tunnel. Tokyo's village road. Nikolai's frozen outpost. Richtofen's voice echoed through the throne room. Let us see how well they work together when the world itself tries to keep them apart. In the subway, Dempsey heard the dead above them suddenly stop clawing. The silence was worse than the noise. Maria looked up. Why did they stop? Dempsey raised his rifle. They didn't stop. A purple glow appeared at the far end of the tunnel. Dempsey's jaw tightened. They changed doors. In the ruined village, Tokyo watched as the sky above the mountain split with purple lightning. The survivors behind him murmured in fear. Hiro stepped closer. "What now?" Tokyo drew his sword. "Now he tests us." In the frozen outpost, Nikolai watched the undead outside suddenly fall still. Then every corpse turned its head toward the main building at once. Rat whispered, "What are they doing?" Nikolai reloaded his weapon. "Being creepy." The radio crackled. Dempsey's voice came through. "Everybody's still alive." Tokyo answered, "For now." Nikolai looked at the barricaded door as something massive moved through the snow outside. "Ask again in 5 minutes." Dempsey breathed heavily over the transmission. "Listen up. I don't know either of you, and I don't care. But this Richtofen freak is playing with us. That means we do the one thing he doesn't want." Tokyo said, "We move toward him." Nikolai smiled. "We survive long enough to punch Castleman in face." Dempsey paused. "Yeah. I like this guy." Above the world, Richtofen watched them prepare. His creatures gathered behind him in the throne room. More portals opened along the walls, revealing shapes waiting in the ether. Larger shapes. Older shapes. Things that had never been allowed into the physical world before. Richtofen extended one hand toward the visions of the three men. "Come then," he whispered. Purple fire reflected in his eyes. "Climb toward heaven." His smile became monstrous. "And I will show you what waits above it." What if Richtofen was born with element 115, part 3? The first time Dempsey heard the voices of Tokyo Mosoki and Nikolai Belinsky through the broken radio, he did not feel relief. Relief was too soft a thing for the world they were living in. What he felt was confirmation. He was not crazy. The castle was real. The man watching from above was real. The dead were not just spreading. They were being sent. Deep beneath the ruined city, inside the abandoned subway tunnels, Dempsey stood beside the radio equipment as purple light pulsed at the far end of the tracks. The survivors behind him stared into the darkness, gripping whatever weapons they had managed to carry from the streets above. Maria held the two children close. Leon had wrapped a bloody cloth around his leg and leaned against the wall, crowbar in hand. The remaining soldiers checked their rifles with shaking fingers, trying to look braver than they felt. The radio crackled again. Nikolai's voice came through first. "American. Your tunnel is glowing purple, yes." Dempsey looked down the tracks. The glow grew brighter. "Yeah," he said. "Let me guess. Yours too." From the radio came the sound of gunfire, then Nikolai laughing breathlessly. "Mine is more snowy, but yes. Very purple. Very bad." Tokeo's voice followed, calmer but strained. "The sky has opened above us. The dead are moving toward my people." Dempsey clenched his jaw. "He's doing this on purpose." "Yes," Tokeo said. "He is testing us." Nikolai grunted over the radio. "Then I hate his test." Dempsey turned to Maria. "Can you keep these people moving?" Maria looked at the tunnel, then at him. "Where?" "Anywhere that isn't here." She swallowed. "There may be maintenance exits farther down. But if that light is coming from the other direction." "It is." Leon pushed himself off the wall. "So what, we run toward the thing that looks like hell itself?" Dempsey looked at him. "No. You run away from it." Leon stared at him for a second before understanding. "You're staying." Dempsey loaded a fresh magazine into his rifle. "Something's coming through that portal. I slow it down. You get everyone out." Maria stepped closer. "You can't hold this tunnel alone." Dempsey gave her a grim smile. "Lady, I've been doing stupid things alone my whole life." The purple light surged. The tracks trembled. A low sound rolled through the tunnel, deeper than a growl, heavier than thunder. Dust fell from the ceiling. Far down the tracks, the portal widened against the darkness like a wound being forced open. The survivors began backing away. Maria reached for Dempsey's arm. "There has to be another way." "There is," he said. "Move." For a moment, she looked like she wanted to argue. Then one of the children began to cry. Maria pulled back, nodded once, and turned to the others. "Everyone move. Stay together. Do not stop." Leon hesitated. Dempsey shouted, "Go!" The group ran deeper into the maintenance tunnel. Dempsey stood alone on the tracks. The radio hung from his belt, still alive with static and distant voices. Tokeo spoke. "Dempsey. What do you see?" Dempsey raised his rifle. "Something ugly." The portal split open fully. A creature stepped through. It had once been human, or at least something close to human, but the ether had rebuilt it into a weapon. Its body was tall and crooked, wrapped in torn flesh and blackened armor fused directly into bone. Its arms were too long, its fingers ending in jagged claws that scraped sparks from the tunnel walls. Purple energy burned inside its chest, pulsing like a second heart. Around it, zombies poured through the portal in waves. Dempsey exhaled slowly. "Yeah," he muttered. "Definitely ugly." Richtofen's voice echoed through the creature's mouth. "Tank Dempsey." Dempsey kept his rifle aimed. "You got a lot of nerve sending your pets instead of showing up yourself." The creature tilted its head. Richtofen laughed through it. "Ah, but where is the art in ending the game immediately? You fascinate me, Dempsey." Bravery wrapped in ignorance. Violence pretending to be purpose. Dempsey fired. The bullet struck the creature in the forehead. Its head snapped back. Then slowly, it looked forward again. Richtofen's voice continued, amused. Oh, wonderful. Direct. Simple. Predictable. Dempsey fired again and again. The zombies behind the creature rushed forward. He met them with gunfire. The first wave fell across the tracks. Dempsey stepped backward, firing in controlled bursts, aiming for glowing eyes and rotting skulls. A zombie lunged from the side. He smashed it with the butt of his rifle and drove his knife under its jaw. The larger creature advanced slowly, unbothered by the corpses dropping around it. The radio crackled. Nikolai shouted, "American! Are you dying?" Dempsey kicked a zombie off him. "Not yet." "Good. I am also not dying. Very busy though." Tokeo's voice came through next. "Do not let the creature speak too long. Richtofen uses words to weaken focus." Dempsey grunted. "Trust me, I'm not feeling inspired." The creature raised one hand. The fallen zombies began to rise again. Dempsey's eyes widened. "Oh, come on." Richtofen laughed. "Did you think death meant something down there?" Dempsey looked at the rising corpses. Then at the creature. Then at the cracked tunnel ceiling above them. A slow, dangerous idea formed in his mind. He stepped backward and spoke into the radio. "Maria, you hear me?" Static. Then her voice came through weakly. "Yes. We found a service ladder. We're climbing out." "How far?" "Almost there." "Good. When you get out, keep running." "Dempsey. Just do it." The creature continued forward. Dempsey looked at the explosives on the belt of a fallen soldier near the tracks. He grabbed them, pulling wires loose with one hand while firing with the other. Richtofen's voice sounded almost pleased. "Ah. Desperation. There it is." Dempsey smiled. "No. Improvisation." He threw one explosive charge against the tunnel wall. Then another. Then he ran. The creature lunged. Its claws tore through the air behind him, slicing open the back of his jacket. Dempsey dove behind a concrete pillar as the horde surged forward. He hit the detonator. The explosion ripped through the subway tunnel. Concrete burst apart. Steel screamed. The ceiling collapsed in a wave of dust and fire. Zombies vanished beneath falling stone. The portal flickered violently, bending inward as the tunnel around it caved in. Dempsey was thrown across the tracks. For several seconds, he heard nothing. Only ringing. Then coughing. His own. He pushed himself up, blood running down the side of his face. The tunnel ahead was blocked by rubble. The purple glow was gone. For a moment, he smiled. Then the rubble moved. A clawed hand punched through the broken stone. Dempsey's smile disappeared. The creature was still alive. Barely. Its body dragged itself from beneath the collapse, half-crushed, purple energy leaking from its wounds. Its face split into something resembling a grin. Richtofen's voice came through distorted. "Resourceful." Dempsey raised his rifle with one arm. "Stubborn." He fired one last shot directly into the glowing heart inside its chest. The creature exploded in purple fire. The blast hurled Dempsey backward again. This time, when he hit the ground, he stayed there. Above the city, Maria and the survivors emerged from a maintenance hatch into an alley filled with smoke. They stumbled into the open air, coughing and gasping. Behind them, the ground shook from the explosion below. The little girl screamed. Maria turned back toward the hatch. "Dempsey!" No answer came. Leon grabbed her shoulder. "We have to go." She shoved him away. "He saved us. And if we stay here, he saved us for nothing." Maria stared at the hatch, torn between grief and survival. Then the boy beside her pointed down the alley. Someone was walking toward them through the smoke. Maria lifted her pistol. "Stay back." The figure raised both hands. "Easy," Dempsey's voice called. "I already had one building fall on me today." Maria lowered the gun, her eyes wide. Dempsey staggered into view, covered in dust and blood, one sleeve torn, his rifle hanging from his shoulder. Leon stared. "How are you alive?" Dempsey looked at him. "Bad attitude." The survivors laughed, not because it was funny, but because they needed something human to hold on to. Maria approached him. "You should be dead." "Yeah," Dempsey said, looking up at the purple clouds above the city. "Seems like a popular opinion lately." The radio at his belt crackled. Nikolai's voice came through. "American? You still breathing?" Dempsey pulled it free. "Yeah." Nikolai laughed. "Good. I would have been sad." "Maybe." Tokyo said, "The creature fell. Blew it apart." "Then it can be done," Tokyo replied. Dempsey looked at the survivors around him, then at the burning skyline. "Yeah. His monsters bleed." Far away, Tokyo stood at the edge of the ruined village as the sky above him tore open. The survivors behind him had barely finished tending their wounds when the purple storm gathered overhead. Hiro gripped his spear, his face pale but determined. The others formed around the wounded, waiting for Tokyo's command. The portal did not open on the ground. It opened in the clouds. From it descended long chains of purple energy, each one striking the earth with enough force to crack stone. The chains burned where they touched the ground, forming a circle around the village. Hiro stared at them. "What is this?" Tokyo's eyes narrowed. "A cage." The air inside the village changed. It became heavier. The survivors began to breathe harder. One woman dropped to her knees, clutching her chest. A child cried out as shadows began moving across the walls of the houses, though there was nothing casting them. Richtofen's voice drifted through the air itself. "Tokyo Mosoki. Such a serious man. So noble. So disciplined. I wonder how long honor survives when surrounded by fear." Tokyo looked toward the sky. "You speak often for one who hides." The clouds flashed purple. Richtofen laughed. "And you speak boldly for a man trapped in a circle." The dead began appearing beyond the chains. Not walking from roads or houses. Appearing. One by one, they stepped out of thin air, drawn from distant places through the ether. Soldiers, villagers, workers, strangers from countries Tokyo had never seen. All dead. All bound. Hiro stepped beside Tokyo. "There are too many." Tokyo did not look away. "Yes." "What do we do?" "We reduce their number." The chains pulsed. The dead charged. Tokyo moved like a blade given human form. He cut through the first zombie, turned, and struck another through the skull. Hiro fought beside him, thrusting his spear with all the courage he could gather. The villagers fought not as warriors, but as people with nowhere left to run. Every swing was desperate. Every shot mattered. A farmer drove a pitchfork through a zombie's chest, only for it to keep crawling toward him. His wife smashed its skull with a stone. A wounded man fired an old rifle until the barrel smoked, then used it as a club. Children hid inside the shrine while two elderly villagers stood at the door with knives, ready to die before letting the dead enter. Tokyo saw all of it. Their fear. Their courage. Their refusal to become nothing. And in that moment, Richtofen's cruelty became clearer to him. Richtofen did not merely want to conquer the world. He wanted to prove it deserved to be conquered. He wanted every act of panic, betrayal, and weakness to confirm his belief that mankind was beneath him. Tokyo would not give him that satisfaction. A zombie broke through the line and lunged at a young mother holding her baby. Tokyo crossed the distance in seconds, severing its arm before it reached her. He drove his sword through its head and turned to the woman. "Go to the shrine." She nodded, trembling. "Thank you." "Live first," he said. "Thank me later." The chains pulsed again. A larger shape formed beyond the circle. This one was different from the others. It wore broken armor from no nation Sogyoka recognized. Its face was hidden behind a cracked mask of black metal. In its hands was a blade made entirely of purple fire. Richtofen's voice came through it. "Let us see if your honor can survive yourself." The masked creature stepped forward. Sogyoka felt the air shift. The creature raised its burning blade. And then its mask changed. For a brief moment, Sogyoka saw his own face reflected in it. Not as he was. As he feared becoming. Cold. Merciless. Empty. Hiro whispered, "Sogyoka-sama." Sogyoka stared at the creature. It spoke in his voice. "You cannot save them." Sogyoka's grip tightened around his sword. The false Sogyoka stepped closer. "You lead them only to delay death." Sogyoka said nothing. The creature continued. "Honor is a story told by the living to make slaughter beautiful." Hiro looked at Sogyoka with fear, not of the monster, but of the possibility that its words had reached him. Sogyoka closed his eyes for 1 second. He heard the villagers behind him. The crying child. The wounded breathing. The old praying. The living still fighting. Then he opened his eyes. "Honor is not beauty," he said. The false Sogyoka tilted its head. Sogyoka raised his sword. "Honor is burden." He charged. Their blades met with a burst of purple light. The impact threw dust and sparks across the village road. The creature fought with Sogyoka's speed, his stance, his discipline. Every strike felt like facing his own reflection. Every movement was familiar. Every counter was known before it happened. Hiro tried to help, but Sogyoka shouted, "No." The young man stopped. Sogyoka understood. This was not a creature meant simply to kill him. It was meant to break him. Richtofen was watching for doubt. The false Sogyoka attacked again, forcing him back toward the shrine. Their blades clashed again and again. Purple fire burned across Sogyoka's shoulder. He ignored the pain. The creature pressed forward. "You will fail them." Sogyoka blocked. "You will watch them die." Sogyoka struck. "You will kneel like all men kneel." Sogyoka stepped inside the creature's guard and slammed his forehead into the mask. The creature staggered. Sogyoka drove his sword into its chest. "I kneel only to what is worthy." The creature froze. Sogyoka twisted the blade. "And you are not." He tore the sword free and cut the mask in half. Purple fire exploded outward. The chains surrounding the village flickered. The undead lost their coordination for just a moment, and that moment was enough. "Now!" Sogyoka shouted. The villagers surged forward. Hiro drove his spear through one zombie after another. The farmers, soldiers, mothers, and old men fought together until the remaining dead were pushed back against the failing chains. The cage shattered. Purple energy burst into the sky. Sogyoka dropped to one knee, breathing hard. His shoulder burned, and blood ran down his arm. Hiro rushed to him. "You are wounded." Sogyoka stood before Hiro could help him. So are many others. He turned to the survivors. "We leave before he sends more." A small girl approached him from the shrine doorway. She carried a strip of cloth in her tiny hands. Sogyoka looked down at her. Without speaking, she offered it to him for his wound. Sogyoka knelt. The girl carefully wrapped the cloth around his bleeding arm, her fingers shaking. "You fought the monster," she whispered. Sogyoka looked at her. "So did you?" She shook her head. "I hid. And survived," he said. "That is also a battle." The girl looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Takeo stood and looked toward the mountains. The radio crackled at his waist. Dempsey's voice came through. "You alive over there?" Takeo answered, "Yes." Nikolai interrupted. "Good. Everyone is alive. This is becoming suspicious." Takeo looked at the broken chains fading into the sky. "He is learning how we fight." Dempsey replied, "Then we better learn faster." In the frozen outpost, Nikolai stood before the barricaded door as the undead outside suddenly went silent. That silence had weight. It pressed against the walls. Katia sat at the radio table, listening to Dempsey and Takeo survive their own battles. Sergei worked frantically to reinforce the generator with wire and scraps of metal. Rat held his rifle so tightly his knuckles had turned white. Nikolai looked through a cracked window. The zombies were still there. Hundreds of them. But none attacked. They stood in the snow, motionless, all facing the outpost. Behind them, the tall dead officer wrapped in purple veins raised one hand. The snow stopped falling. Katia whispered, "That is impossible." Nikolai took a drink from his flask. "Many things are impossible now. Keep list later." The temperature dropped sharply. Frost spread across the inside of the windows. The lights flickered. The radio screamed with static. Then the dead officer spoke, but not with Richtofen's voice this time. It spoke with the voices of Nikolai's fallen comrades. "Nikolai?" His smile faded. The voices came from outside. From the radio. From the walls. Men he had watched die. Men he had failed to save. "Nikolai?" Rat looked at him. "What is that?" Nikolai did not answer. The door creaked under pressure, though nothing touched it. One voice rose above the others. "You left us." Nikolai's face hardened. Sergei stepped out from the back room. "What is it?" Nikolai raised his weapon. "Trick." The voice came again. "You ran while we died." Nikolai's jaw tightened. Katia looked at him carefully. "You knew them?" Nikolai laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "I know many dead men." The officer outside stepped closer. Its face shifted. For a moment, it wore the face of a young Russian soldier. Then another. Then another. Faces Nikolai recognized. Men who had shared fires, bottles, jokes, trenches, and final screams. The door opened by itself. Cold wind poured in. Rat raised his rifle. "Shoot it." Nikolai pushed the barrel down. "No." Rat stared at him. "Are you insane?" "Yes. But not because of this." The dead officer entered. The other zombies remained outside, waiting. The creature stood in the doorway, purple veins pulsing beneath its frozen skin. Its face changed again, becoming that of a man Nikolai had once called brother. "Nikolai," it said. "Why did you survive?" Nikolai's fingers twitched around his gun. Katia whispered, "Do not listen to it." The creature stepped forward. "Why you and not us?" Nikolai breathed slowly. Richtofen's influence was obvious now. Not loud. Not laughing. This was more personal. More careful. The castle man was digging. The creature reached out a hand. "You could join us." Nikolai looked at the dead face before him. For a moment, the room seemed to vanish. He was back in snow. Back in fire. Back with men screaming his name. He remembered running. He remembered surviving. He remembered hating himself for it. The creature smiled gently. "No more guilt. No more cold. No more pain. Come with us." Rat lowered his rifle slightly, horrified by what he was seeing. Sergei said quietly, "Nikolai." Nikolai raised one hand, silencing him. Then he stepped closer to the creature. You ask why I survived? The creature nodded. Nikolai stared into its glowing eyes. I ask same question every day. The creature smiled wider. Then stop asking. Nikolai leaned close. No. The creature's smile faded. Nikolai lifted his pistol and pressed it beneath the creature's chin. I keep asking because answer changes. Some days, I survive for nothing. Some days, I survive to drink. Some days, I survive because death is too cowardly to take me. His eyes hardened. But today? The creature growled. Nikolai pulled the trigger. The shot blew through its skull. Today I survived to kill your master. The creature staggered backward, but did not fall. Purple energy erupted from its body, filling the room with screaming faces. The zombies outside charged all at once. Nikolai turned and shouted, "Now you shoot!" Rat, Katya, and Sergei opened fire. The outpost became chaos. Zombies crashed through windows. Sergei swung a wrench into one skull and kicked another into the stove. Katya fired with one hand while trying to keep the radio alive with the other. Rat screamed every time he pulled the trigger, but he did not run. Nikolai fought like a man arguing with death and winning by being louder. He drove a bayonet through one zombie, shot another, then slammed a burning chair into a third. The dead officer rose again, its skull half gone, purple light pouring from the wound. Nikolai grabbed a bottle from his coat, stuffed a cloth into it, and lit it from the stove. Sergei saw it and shouted, "That is your last bottle." Nikolai looked offended. Yes. This is how you know situation is serious. He threw it. The bottle shattered against the dead officer, covering it in fire. Purple energy reacted violently with the flames. The creature screamed in a dozen stolen voices. Nikolai lifted a grenade. Tell Richtofen, he said, I prefer my ghosts honest. He threw the grenade into the creature's chest. The explosion tore the front of the outpost open. Snow, fire, and purple light blasted outward. When the smoke cleared, the dead officer was gone. The horde outside stumbled, confused, then collapsed into disorganized movement. Katya coughed from beneath a fallen table. Is everyone alive? Sergei groaned. I think so. Rat sat against the wall, shaking. I hate all of you. Nikolai stood in the ruined doorway, coat smoking, face covered in soot. He looked down at his empty hand. Then at the burning remains of his bottle. My friend, he said sadly. You died hero. The radio sparked. Dempsey's voice came through. Nikolai? Nikolai grabbed the microphone. I am here. Tokyo asked, you defeated the creature. Nikolai looked at the burning snow. Yes. But it talked too much. Dempsey gave a short laugh. Seems like Richtofen's style. Katya adjusted the radio frequency, eyes widening as the signal suddenly cleared. Wait, she said. Something is happening. A deep hum came through the speakers. Not static. A frequency. Steady. Powerful. Tokyo heard it too. Dempsey heard it. Across all three locations, purple light began to pulse in rhythm with the sound. Katya leaned closer. This signal is not coming from any radio tower. Dempsey looked up at the sky. It's him. Tokyo closed his eyes, listening. No. Not only him. High above the world, Richtofen stood in his throne room, surrounded by portal windows showing the aftermath of the three battles. Dempsey had collapsed the tunnel and lived. Tokyo had broken the ether cage. Nikolai had resisted the voices of his dead. Richtofen should have been irritated. Instead, he was delighted. He clapped slowly, the sound echoing through the chamber. Marvelous. Elise stood behind him, watching the visions with something dangerously close to hope. They survived. Richtofen glanced back at her. Yes. They did. She lowered her head quickly. He studied her. You are pleased? No, my lord. Again with dishonesty. Elise went silent. Richtofen turned fully toward her. Careful, Elise. Hope is a rebellious little disease. She met his gaze, afraid but unable to hide it. Maybe they can stop this. The throne room darkened. The zombies behind Richtofen turned toward her. For a moment, Elise thought she had gone too far. Then Richtofen smiled. Stop this. He walked toward her slowly. My dear, they are not stopping anything. He gestured toward the portal windows. They are climbing exactly where I want them to climb. Every wound teaches me their shape. Every victory reveals their limits. Every act of defiance brings them closer to me. Elise whispered, and if they reach you? Richtofen leaned close. Then I finally get to see whether men can stand before a god without kneeling. He turned away from her and raised both hands. The throne room floor opened. Not physically. Reality itself unfolded. Beneath the castle, beneath the mountain, beneath the laws of the world, something ancient stirred inside the ether. Even Richtofen's creatures backed away. Elise felt it and nearly fell to her knees. It was not a zombie. Not a creature. Not a portal. It was a presence. Vast. Sleeping. Aware. For the first time, the castle did not hum in obedience. It groaned. Richtofen's smile became sharper, but there was tension behind it. There you are, he whispered. Deep in the ether, something opened an eye. Not an eye of flesh. An eye made of endless purple fire. Across the world, every portal flickered. Every zombie froze. Every survivor who had been touched by the ether felt a cold pressure behind their mind. Dempsey looked up from the ruined alley. What the hell was that? Tokyo placed a hand on his sword. The wound is deeper than I thought. Nikolai stared at the radio as the hum became a whisper. I think Castle Man woke something up. In the throne room, Richtofen stood over the opening in reality, staring into the vast presence beneath his castle. For years, he had believed the ether belonged to him. For years, everything in it had listened. But this thing did not kneel. It watched him. Richtofen's expression remained controlled, but his fingers curled slightly. You have been hiding from me, he said. The presence did not answer in words. The castle shook. Several zombies collapsed, their bodies burning from the inside with purple flame. Portal windows cracked like glass. Elise covered her ears as voices filled the room, millions of them layered together, speaking from every direction. Richtofen raised his hand, forcing the ether back into shape. I am Edward Richtofen, he said, voice growing louder. I was born with element 115 in my blood. I opened your gates before I could even understand them. I shaped your creatures. I commanded your realm. The presence stared. Richtofen smiled, but now it was not amusement. It was challenge. You will obey me too. The eye narrowed. For 1 second, the throne room vanished. Richtofen saw something. A future. His castle broken. His throne empty. The world consumed not by his order but by endless ether chaos. And standing in the ruins were the 3 men he had been playing with. Dempsey. Tokyo. Nikolai. Not kneeling. Not dead. Holding something he could not yet see clearly. Something capable of reaching him. Then the vision ended. Richtofen stood motionless. Elise slowly lowered her hands. My lord? Richtofen did not answer. The portal windows repaired themselves one by one. The castle stopped shaking. The zombies rose again, but slower than before, as if something else had touched them. Richtofen turned toward the visions of the 3 men. His delight was gone. Now there was calculation. They are not merely surviving, he whispered. Elise barely heard him. They are connected to it. He stepped back toward his throne. The ether beneath the castle sealed shut, though the presence remained somewhere beyond sight, watching. Richtofen sat slowly. For the first time in his life, he felt the shape of danger. Not fear. Not yet. But danger. He looked at Dempsey, Sogyoka, and Nikolai through the portal windows. Then he smiled again. Colder than before. Very well. He lifted one hand, and new portals opened across the world. Not to send zombies. To summon something far worse. Let us stop playing with pets. In the ruined city, Dempsey helped Maria and the survivors move through the streets toward an old evacuation point. The sky above them still pulsed with purple light, but now there was something different in it. The clouds moved like they were breathing. Maria noticed Dempsey staring. What is it? Dempsey shook his head. Don't know. But I think our castle friend just got nervous. Leon limped behind them. That sounds good, right? Dempsey looked toward the horizon, where a new portal opened above the city. Something massive moved behind it. No, he said. That sounds like he's about to get serious. In Japan, Sogyoka led the survivors away from the ruined village. The mountains ahead were covered in stormlight. The visions returned to him stronger than before. He saw Dempsey. He saw Nikolai. He saw a path through a place between worlds. And then he saw Richtofen's castle. Closer this time. Waiting. Hiro walked beside him. Sogyoka-sama, where do we go now? Sogyoka looked at the purple-lit mountains. To the place where paths meet. Do you know where that is? Sogyoka's eyes narrowed. No. He touched the radio at his side. But I believe they do. In the frozen outpost, Katia managed to stabilize the strange frequency. A map lay across the table, marked with static bursts and energy readings. Sergei leaned over it, grease-stained fingers tracing the signals. These points, he said, they are not random. Nikolai looked down. The signals formed a pattern. 3 lines moving toward the same location. Katia whispered, it's drawing us together. Rat laughed nervously. What is? The radio hummed. For a moment, beneath the static, another voice whispered. Not Richtofen. Something older. Nikolai stared at the radio. Then he looked at the map. Looks like we are going on trip. Rat shook his head. No. Absolutely not. The last trip had dead people, ghost soldiers, and you wasting alcohol as explosives. Nikolai grabbed his rifle. Exactly. Very educational. Katia pointed to the center of the map. If this is right, the signal is coming from an abandoned research facility. Old. Hidden. It may have been studying the same energy. Dempsey's voice came through the radio. Send coordinates. Sogyoka followed. I will move toward them. Nikolai grinned. Good. We meet at creepy secret facility. Very normal. Dempsey said, once we're together, we find a way up to that castle. Sogyoka's voice was steady. And then Richtofen answers for what he has done. Nikolai lifted the microphone. And if he does not answer, we make him. Above the world, Richtofen listened. The 3 lines were moving closer. The resistance had direction now. A destination. A chance. He could have crushed the facility before they reached it. He could have opened the earth beneath it. He could have filled it with the dead until nothing remained. But the vision had shown them there. The path to the danger he had seen began at that place. And Richtofen needed to understand it. So he would let them come. He leaned back on his throne, eyes glowing faintly purple. Come together, then, he whispered. Find your little secret. Open your little door. Behind him, the deeper presence in the ether watched in silence. Richtofen's smile returned. But remember this. He raised his hand, and the largest portal yet began to open beneath the castle. From within came a sound like 1,000 bones bending at once. The closer you come to me. A colossal shadow moved behind the portal. Richtofen's eyes burned with divine madness. The more of my world comes with you. What if Richtofen was born with element 115, final? The abandoned research facility waited at the center of the storm. It stood hidden between dead mountains and frozen forests, buried beneath years of secrecy, war, and snow. From the outside, it looked like nothing more than a collapsed military installation, half swallowed by the earth, its towers broken, its walls cracked, its fences bent beneath the weight of ice. But beneath it, something still breathed. The ether pulsed below the facility like a second heartbeat. Dempsey felt it before he saw the place. He stood at the edge of the frozen ridge with Maria, Leon, Katia, Sergei, Hero, and the rest of the scattered survivors who had managed to reach the coordinates. Behind them, the long road was marked with fire, broken vehicles, and bodies that had not stayed still for long enough to be buried. The journey had cost them. Some had fallen. Some had turned. Some had vanished into purple light and never returned. But the three men who had been drawn together by fate still stood. Dempsey stared down at the facility, his rifle resting in his hands. So this is it, he said. Nikolai stood beside him, coat torn, face bruised, one eye darkened from a fight that had nearly killed him 3 nights earlier. He looked at the facility and gave a tired laugh. Of course it is underground. Evil things never choose nice beach. Takeo stood on the other side, silent, his hand resting near the hilt of his sword. The wind moved through his hair and carried the faint sound of whispers from the valley below. Maria stepped closer to Dempsey. You really think there's a way to reach the castle down there? Dempsey looked at the purple lightning crawling through the clouds above the mountains. I think Richtofen didn't want us finding this place. Katia adjusted the damaged radio on her back. The signal is strongest below us. Stronger than anything I've seen. If the maps are right, there's an old chamber beneath the main laboratory. Sergei frowned. Old chamber? Katia nodded. Older than the facility. The facility was built around it. Nikolai looked at Dempsey. That sounds bad. Dempsey nodded. Usually is. Hero looked between the three of them. And if we go inside? Takeo answered without looking away from the facility. Then we stop running. The survivors grew quiet. For weeks, they had done nothing but run. From cities. From villages. From tunnels. From the dead. From purple skies and impossible monsters and voices that whispered from broken radios. Now there was nowhere else to run to. Only forward. A child standing near Maria took her hand. Is the man in the sky going to come? Maria looked down at him, then toward the castle barely visible through the clouds far above the world. I think he already knows we're here. High above them, Edward Richtofen watched from his throne. The portal windows across his chamber showed every angle of the facility. The broken gates. The frozen roads. The survivors gathering at the ridge. Dempsey, Takeo, and Nikolai standing together at last. For so long, they had been separated pieces on a board. Now they were one. Richtofen sat in silence, his expression unreadable. Behind him, Elise stood near the entrance to the throne room, hands folded tightly in front of her. She had stopped pretending she was not afraid. Everyone in the castle was afraid now. Even the creatures. The ether itself had changed. It no longer obeyed Richtofen as smoothly as before. Portals flickered when he opened them. Zombies sometimes froze without command. Whispers echoed through the castle walls, voices that did not belong to him. The thing beneath the ether had awakened. And it was watching. My lord, Elise said carefully. Richtofen did not turn. They reached the facility. Yes. Should I prepare the lower halls? No. Elise hesitated. The creatures? No. She looked at the portal windows, then back at him. You are letting them enter. Richtofen smiled faintly. Letting. The word amused him. He slowly stood from the throne. Elise, you still think of this as though they are storming my gates. They have not reached me. They have reached a door. A very old door. One I have spent years trying to open fully. Elise's voice was quiet. And you believe they can open it? Richtofen looked at Dempsey, Sogyoka, and Nikolai through the portal. I believe the ether has chosen them as a key. Elise felt the cold in the room deepen. And when the door opens? Richtofen's eyes glowed purple. Then I take what is on the other side. Below, the group entered the facility through the shattered main gate. The moment they crossed into the compound, the wind stopped. No one spoke. The silence was too complete. Snow hung in the air without falling. Smoke from burning wrecks froze in twisting shapes. The world outside seemed to hold its breath. Leon looked around nervously. Anyone else seeing that? Nikolai poked a floating snowflake with one finger. Yes. Snow is being stupid. Dempsey raised his rifle. Keep moving. They passed abandoned guard posts, broken searchlights, and frozen bodies still sitting behind sandbags. Some had died years ago. Others looked fresh. That was the first sign that time inside the facility did not move correctly. At the entrance to the main building, a message had been carved into the metal door from the inside. Do not let the gate dream. Katia stared at it. What does that mean? Sergei shook his head. I do not want to know. Sogyoka stepped forward and touched the carved letters. A vision struck him. A laboratory filled with screaming scientists. A machine built around a glowing purple stone. A door opening beneath the earth. Men staring into the ether and realizing something inside was staring back. Sogyoka pulled his hand away. Dempsey noticed. What did you see? Sogyoka looked at the door. Men who thought knowledge was the same as wisdom. Nikolai grunted. So, scientists. Dempsey kicked the door open. Inside, the facility was dark. Their flashlights moved across cracked walls, overturned desks, frozen blood, and old equipment covered in dust. Papers were scattered everywhere, some written in languages none of them recognized, others covered in equations and warnings. Katia picked up one folder, carefully brushing snow from its surface. Element 115 trials, she read. Dempsey looked back at her. What kind of trials? She turned the page, her face tightening. Human exposure. Ether contact. Portal stabilization. Neural resonance. Nikolai frowned. Use smaller words. Katia looked at him. They were trying to connect living people directly to the ether. Maria whispered, like Richtofen. Sogyoka's expression darkened. No. Richtofen was born connected. Dempsey looked down the hallway. And they tried to recreate him. A sound echoed from deeper inside. Metal dragging against concrete. Everyone froze. Dempsey lifted one hand. The survivors stopped behind him. From the darkness ahead came a voice. Help me. Maria's eyes widened. A man stumbled into the flashlight beam. He wore the torn remains of a scientist's coat. His skin was pale, his eyes sunken, and his mouth trembled as if he had forgotten how to form words. Around his neck hung an old identification card covered in frost. Katia stepped forward. Wait. He's alive. Dempsey grabbed her arm. Hold on. The man looked at them with desperate eyes. Please. You have to leave. You have to leave before the gate opens again. Dempsey kept his rifle aimed. Who are you? The man swallowed. Dr. Abel Kramer. Research Division 9. Sergei stared at him. That facility has been abandoned for decades. Kramer's eyes twitched. Decades. No one answered. He looked down at his own hands as if seeing them for the first time. No. No, that cannot be. We sealed the chamber yesterday. Nikolai leaned toward Dempsey. I dislike him. Dempsey ignored him. What chamber? Kramer's breathing quickened. The ether gate. Beneath the facility. We found it before the war. Before the experiments. Before everything. It was already here, buried in the rock. Tokyo stepped closer. What is it? Kramer looked at him with terror. A wound. The lights flickered. Far above them, thunder rolled through the frozen sky. Kramer continued, voice shaking. We thought element 115 was the power source. We thought the ether was a dimension. A place. A field of energy. We were wrong. The ether is not empty. It is not passive. It dreams. It remembers. It hungers through anything connected to it. Dempsey's jaw tightened. And Richtofen? Kramer's face changed at the name. He was in the records. The child. The impossible birth. Element 115 in the blood from the beginning. We believed he was the first successful natural conduit. Maria whispered, natural conduit. Katia answered quietly. A living doorway. Kramer nodded. He is not just controlling the ether. He is holding it open with himself. Every portal, every corpse, every distortion, he is using his own connection to force the ether into the world. Tokyo looked down the hallway. And the presence beneath it. Kramer's eyes filled with fear. You felt it. Nikolai laughed softly. Hard to miss ancient evil eyeball in sky. Kramer stepped back. No. No, you do not understand. Richtofen thinks he found a god to command. But what he awakened is not a god. Dempsey asked, then what is it? Kramer looked at them one by one. The ether's will. The building groaned. Purple light pulsed beneath the floor. Kramer grabbed Dempsey's sleeve. It does not want to destroy the world like Richtofen does. It wants to absorb it. No nations. No death. No life. No time. Everything folded into itself forever. Richtofen opened the wound. But if the ethers will rise fully, there will be no world left for him to rule. Silence followed. Then Nikolai sighed. So Castle Man is bad, but giant ether thing is worse. Dempsey looked at Tokyo. Tokyo nodded slowly. Richtofen is the hand holding the wound open. The ether is what bleeds through. Katia looked at the old scientist. How do we close it? Kramer's face twisted with grief. The chamber below has a stabilizer. It was designed to seal the gate. But it failed because we had no living counterforce strong enough to oppose a natural conduit. Dempsey understood before Kramer finished. You need us. Kramer looked at him. The three of you have been touched differently. Not born with it. Not consumed by it. Changed through survival, resistance, and exposure. The ether has marked you, but it does not own you. Nikolai raised a hand. I object. I do not like being marked by creepy purple hell. Dempsey said, noted. Kramer looked toward the elevator at the end of the hall. If you reach the chamber, the stabilizer can open a path to Richtofen's castle. But once there, you must sever his connection from within the throne room. Maria stepped forward. And what happens to them if they do? Kramer did not answer. Maria's eyes hardened. What happens? The old scientist looked at Dempsey, Tokyo, and Nikolai. The ether will fight to keep the wound open. Richtofen will fight to keep his power. The stabilizer will need someone on both sides. One group below. One group above. Leon swallowed. Meaning? Kramer's voice lowered. Someone must stay behind to hold the gate steady. The survivors looked at one another. Dempsey looked at Maria. No. Maria stared back at him. You don't even know what I was going to say. Yeah, I do. I can help. No. Her expression sharpened. You do not get to decide who gets to be brave. Dempsey stepped closer. I'm not deciding that. I'm deciding you're not dying in some underground nightmare because of me. Maria looked at him with quiet anger. This stopped being about you a long time ago. The words hit harder than he expected. She continued. You saved us. Now let us choose what to do with that. Leon nodded slowly. She's right. Dempsey turned to him. You too. Leon lifted his crowbar. I'm tired of running through tunnels while monsters chase us. I want to help shut the door. Katia adjusted the radio strap on her shoulder. I can operate the equipment if Kramer guides me. Sergo grunted. I can keep machine alive. Hiro looked at Tokyo. And I will stay with them. Tokyo shook his head. You are young. Hiro smiled sadly. So is the child who gave you the cloth. So were many who died before reaching this place. Youth does not protect anyone anymore. Tokyo looked at him for a long moment. Then he bowed his head. You have become stronger than fear. Hiro bowed back. Because I watched you stand before it. Nikolai looked at Rat, who had been unusually silent near the back. And you? You will complain dramatically. Rat looked at the hallway, then at the people around him. I was a coward before all this. Nikolai smiled. Was. Rat gave him a bitter look. I am still a coward. But I am tired of being only that. Nikolai's smile faded into something almost respectful. Good answer. Kramer led them deeper into the facility. The lower levels became stranger with every floor. They passed rooms where time had broken. In one laboratory, coffee still poured from a pot into a cup, frozen midstream for decades. In another, a corpse sat at a desk, aging and aging in flickering waves, skin rotting away and returning again every few seconds. The survivors moved in silence. In the deepest hallway, they found the first real resistance. The dead were waiting. Not a horde. An army. Hundreds of corpses stood between them and the chamber doors, packed shoulder to shoulder beneath flickering lights. Scientists. Soldiers. Prisoners. Workers. All those who had died in the facility. Their purple eyes opened at once. Dempsey loaded his rifle. Guess we're not sneaking. Nikolai cracked his neck. Good. Sneaking is for people with patience. Tokyo drew his sword. Kramer backed away, horrified. They were sealed in the lower levels. Dempsey stepped forward. Not anymore. The dead charged. The hallway exploded into violence. Dempsey fired until the muzzle flashed white-hot. Nikolai threw grenades into the mass and laughed like a man trying to drown out fear itself. Tokyo moved through the chaos with deadly precision, cutting open a path while Hiro fought at his side. Maria and Leon protected the civilians behind them. Katia dragged Kramer forward when he froze. Sergei carried a heavy tool bag in one hand and a pistol in the other, shouting curses every time the lights failed. The hallway became a river of bodies. A zombie tackled Leon to the floor. Maria shot it off him and pulled him up. You good? Leon coughed. No. Good enough. They kept moving. Rat fired until his weapon jammed. A zombie lunged at him, and for one terrible second he froze. Nikolai saw it. Rat! Rat screamed, pulled a knife, and drove it into the zombie's eye. It collapsed on top of him. He shoved it away, shaking violently. Nikolai grabbed him and hauled him to his feet. Still coward? Rat breathed hard. Yes. Nikolai shoved a rifle into his hands. Then be coward with better weapon. They reached the chamber doors at the end of the hall. Sergei and Katya worked together to open them while the others held the dead back. Kramer pressed his hand against a scanner that should not have still recognized him. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the facility seemed to wake. The doors opened. Purple light flooded the hallway. The chamber beyond was enormous. It had not been built. It had been uncovered. A vast circular cavern stretched beneath the earth, its walls covered in ancient stone markings that predated every nation above them. At the center stood a machine built around a massive rift in reality. The Ether Gate. It pulsed and twisted like a living wound, showing glimpses of Richtofen's castle above the world. The throne room. The portal windows. The impossible sky. Richtofen waiting. The survivors entered, staring in awe and terror. Katya looked at the old machinery surrounding the gate. This was never meant to open it, she said. Kramer nodded. It was meant to close it. Dempsey turned to everyone. Then let's close it. The machine came alive under Katya and Sergei's hands. Kramer guided them from memory, though his mind seemed to fracture more the closer he came to the gate. Sometimes he spoke normally. Sometimes he answered voices no one else could hear. As the stabilizer powered up, the ether reacted. The chamber shook. Zombies began throwing themselves through the open doors behind them. Maria, Leon, Hero, Rat, and the remaining survivors formed a defensive line. Dempsey looked at them. You don't have to do this. Maria smiled faintly. You said there's always a way out. Dempsey gave a tired laugh. Yeah. She raised her pistol. We'll make one. Tokyo placed a hand on Hero's shoulder. You have honored your people. Hero looked at him. Then finish this for them. Nikolai looked at Sergei, Katya, and Rat. I would give speech, but I am bad at them. Katya smiled. You are terrible at them. Nikolai nodded. So I say this. Do not die until we win. Rat swallowed. That is your speech. Yes. Sergei grunted. Could be worse. The stabilizer reached full power. A bridge of purple-white energy formed inside the gate, stretching upward through reality toward the castle. Kramer shouted over the noise. Now! The path will not hold. Dempsey, Tokyo, and Nikolai stepped toward the gate. Then the ethers will spoke. Not through a creature. Not through a radio. Through every wall, every shadow, every pulse of element 115 in the world. Its voice was endless. You are wounds pretending to be men. Everyone froze. Maria fell to one knee, clutching her head. Katya screamed. Sergei slammed his hands against the console to keep from collapsing. The zombies stopped attacking and turned toward the gate as if listening to their true master. Dempsey staggered but stayed standing. Shut it out! Tokyo gripped his sword with both hands. It is trying to enter us. Nikolai winced. Rude. The voice continued. The one above opened the door. You will close it. But all doors lead inward. The gate widened. Dempsey looked at the others. Ready? Tokyo nodded. For those who still live. Nikolai smiled. And for those too stubborn to stay dead. They stepped into the light. The journey through the ether was not movement. It was memory. Dempsey saw every battlefield he had survived. Every soldier he had lost. Every civilian he had failed to save. He heard Maria calling his name through collapsing tunnels. He saw the children in the subway. He saw himself as a man made only of violence, useful only when the world was ending. Then Tokeo's voice cut through the vision. You are more than the weapon you carry. Dempsey reached forward. The memory shattered. Tokeo saw every code he had followed and every moment when honor had almost become pride. He saw the false version of himself again, standing among dead villagers, asking whether discipline mattered in a dying world. Then Nikolai's voice broke through. If world is dying, annoy death. Works for me. Tokeo almost smiled. The vision shattered. Nikolai saw the dead again. His comrades. His failures. His bottles. His jokes. His guilt. The ether offered him silence. No more pain. No more remembering. No more waking each day with ghosts beside him. Then Dempsey's voice struck through the darkness. Don't you dare quit now. Nikolai opened his eyes. Was not planning to. The ether tore open. The three men landed hard on black stone. They were in Richtofen's castle. The throne room towered around them, vast and alive with purple fire. Portal windows lined the walls, showing the world below. The floor pulsed with veins of element 115 energy. Above them, the ceiling opened into the endless ether sky. And at the far end of the room, Edward Richtofen stood before his throne. He was smiling. My friends, Richtofen said. At last. Dempsey rose to his feet, lifting his rifle. We're not your friends. Nikolai stood beside him. I was going to say that. Tokeo drew his sword. Your reign ends here. Richtofen looked genuinely pleased. Such conviction. Such drama. I almost admire it. Dempsey stepped forward. You've killed millions. Richtofen's smile faded slightly. I have reshaped millions. You call this reshaping? Richtofen turned toward a portal window showing the burning world. I call it truth. Look at them. Frightened. Violent. Desperate. Without order, humanity devours itself. I simply gave the hunger a face. Tokeo said, you gave it your face. Richtofen looked at him. And what would you give it? Honor? Hope? Sacrifice? Beautiful words men use while standing on graves. Nikolai pointed his weapon at him. You talk like man who has never been punched enough. Richtofen laughed. I was born connected to eternity. I opened portals as a child while others cried for their mothers. I commanded the dead before armies knew how to fear them. I built a castle above the world and made kings tremble in their sleep. Purple energy flared around him. I am not a man waiting to be punched. The throne room shook. The dead began emerging from portals along the walls. Dozens. Hundreds. Dempsey raised his rifle. Then we'll improvise. The final battle began. The throne room erupted into chaos as zombies poured from every side. Dempsey fired into the horde, moving constantly, drawing them away from Tokeo as he cut through the front line. Nikolai hurled explosives into clusters of undead, laughing and shouting insults over the roar of gunfire. Richtofen moved through it all like a conductor. He did not fight at first. He commanded. A gesture sent zombies crawling across the ceiling. Another opened portals beneath Dempsey's feet, forcing him to dive aside before being pulled into the void. He twisted gravity around Tokeo, making the floor tilt beneath him. He trapped Nikolai inside a ring of purple fire, then laughed as the Russian charged through it anyway, coat burning. You are persistent, Richtofen said. Nikolai patted out the flames on his sleeve. I am also flammable. We all learn things. Dempsey shot 3 zombies closing in behind him. Less talking, more killing. Tokeo rushed toward Richtofen. Richtofen raised his hand, and a wall of ether energy slammed into him, throwing him across the throne room. He struck the floor hard but rolled back to his feet. Dempsey opened fire at Richtofen. The bullet stopped inches from his face, suspended in purple light. Richtofen looked at them, amused. Primitive. He flicked his fingers. The bullets reversed direction. Dempsey dove behind a pillar as they tore through the stone. Nikolai shouted, "I hate magic bullets." Below, in the facility chamber, the survivors fought to keep the gate stable. The stabilizer screamed under the strain. Katia worked the controls while Sergei tried to stop the machine from tearing itself apart. Kramer stood beside them, eyes wide, whispering calculations under his breath. Maria, Leon, Hero, Rat, and the others held the chamber doors against the undead. The dead were no longer just attacking. They were throwing themselves into the machine. "They're trying to break the stabilizer," Katia shouted. Maria fired into the horde. "Then don't let them." Leon swung his crowbar until his arms shook. Hero fought with a broken spear and a stolen blade. Rat dragged a wounded survivor behind cover, then returned to the line despite every instinct telling him to run. Kramer suddenly froze. Katia looked at him. "Doctor?" He stared at the gate. "It is speaking again." Sergei grabbed his shoulder. "Then stop listening." Kramer's eyes filled with tears. "It says we are too late." The machine sparked violently. A crack opened across the main stabilizer core. Katia shouted, "If that core fails, the gate collapses with them inside." Maria turned back. "How do we fix it?" Kramer looked at the core. Then at the gate. Then at the others. "There is no fixing it from here." Sergei understood first. "No." Kramer stepped toward the machine. Katia grabbed him. "What are you doing?" "What I should have done decades ago." "You'll die." Kramer smiled sadly. "I already did. Time only forgot to finish the paperwork." He pulled free and climbed into the stabilizer housing. Purple electricity crawled across his body. He screamed but forced his hands onto the manual control rods. The gate steadied. Katia stared in horror. "Kramer!" He looked at her through the light. "Tell them the door is open." Then the energy swallowed him. The stabilizer roared back to full power. In the castle, the throne room floor cracked. Richtofen felt it immediately. His expression changed. Dempsey noticed. "What's wrong, Doc?" "Castle giving you trouble." Richtofen turned sharply toward the center of the room. "No." A beam of energy erupted from the floor, connecting the castle to the facility below. The stabilizer had reached him. Symbols across the throne room ignited, old markings hidden beneath Richtofen's own designs. Tokyo looked at them. "The chamber is connected to this place." Nikolai grinned. "Good. Let us break expensive castle." Richtofen's eyes burned. "You understand nothing." He raised both hands, and the entire throne room shifted. The walls bent outward. The ceiling tore open wider. The ether poured in like a storm. Zombies disintegrated in the blast, their energy flowing back into Richtofen. His body lifted from the ground. Purple fire surrounded him. "I was born for this," he said, voice echoing with impossible power. "I am the gate. I am the will. I am the one who commands what lies beyond death." Then the ethers will spoke through the castle. "You are not the will." Richtofen froze. The eye opened above the throne room. Vast. Burning. Endless. For the first time, Richtofen looked upward not with command, but rage. "You dare speak over me?" The ethers will answered. "You are the wound." The castle shook violently. Portal windows shattered. The throne cracked down the middle. Richtofen screamed and forced his power upward against the eye, trying to bend it, bind it, dominate it as he had dominated everything else. Dempsey stared at the impossible sight. Is it fighting him? Tokyo's eyes narrowed. No. It is trying to take him. Nikolai looked between them. Then we let it. Takeo shook his head. If it takes him, the wound remains open forever. Dempsey understood. We have to stop both. Richtofen's body flickered between man and portal, between flesh and ether. His connection was tearing wider. The eye pressed down from above. The stabilizer pulled from below. The throne room became the center of a war between three forces. Richtofen's will. The ether's hunger. Humanity's refusal. Dempsey, Takeo, and Nikolai fought their way toward the cracked throne. Every step was agony. Purple lightning tore around them. Shadows clawed from the floor. The dead rose and burned and rose again. Dempsey was knocked down by a blast of energy. A zombie crawled onto him, jaws snapping inches from his face. He held it back with one arm, reached for his sidearm, and fired through its skull. Takeo cut through a wall of ether shadows, his sword cracking under the force. One shadow took the form of the little girl from the village, crying for help. He closed his eyes for half a breath, then opened them and cut through the illusion. Nikolai staggered as the voices of his dead comrades surrounded him again. Stay. Rest. Join us. He spat blood onto the floor. You keep offering rest, he growled. I keep saying no. He charged through them. At the center of the throne room, the cracked throne revealed a core of glowing element 115. It was not just decoration. It was the anchor. Richtofen had built his castle around it. His throne was the point where his body, the ether, and the world connected. Takeo shouted, "The throne!" Dempsey looked at the glowing core. Of course. Evil chair. Nikolai pulled the last explosive from his belt. I knew furniture was problem. Richtofen saw them moving toward it. No. His voice struck like thunder. The three men were thrown backward. Richtofen descended in front of the throne, no longer fully human. His veins glowed purple. His eyes burned like portals. Behind him, the ether eye widened, trying to pull him upward. He looked at them with hatred now. Not amusement. Not curiosity. Hatred. You think you are heroes, he snarled. You think standing together makes you meaningful? I have seen the shape of eternity. I have held worlds in my hands. I have looked down on mankind and found it wanting. Dempsey pushed himself up. Yeah? Well, mankind's looking back now. Takeo stood beside him. And it does not kneel. Nikolai raised his weapon. And it has explosives. Richtofen screamed and unleashed everything. The blast tore across the throne room. Dempsey, Takeo, and Nikolai charged into it. Dempsey fired until his rifle broke, then used it as a club. Takeo's sword shattered against a wave of energy, but he took the broken blade and kept moving. Nikolai was thrown to the ground, rolled, and came up laughing with the explosive still in his hand. Richtofen grabbed Dempsey by the throat and lifted him from the ground. You are nothing, Richtofen hissed. Dempsey choked, but smiled. Then why are you trying so hard? Takeo drove the broken sword into Richtofen's side. Richtofen screamed and dropped Dempsey. Nikolai slammed into him from the other side, forcing him back toward the throne. Dempsey grabbed Richtofen's arm. Takeo seized the other. Richtofen struggled, purple fire bursting from his body. You cannot hold me. Dempsey gritted his teeth. Wasn't planning to. Nikolai shoved the explosive into the cracked throne core. Richtofen's eyes widened. No. Nikolai smiled. Yes. Below, in the facility chamber, Katia saw the stabilizer reach overload. The anchor is exposed, she shouted. Maria fired her last bullet, then grabbed a metal pipe and stood beside Leon. What does that mean? Katia looked at the gate. It means they did it. The machine began to collapse. Sergei shouted, Gate will not hold. Hiro looked at the portal, then at the people fighting around him. They need more time. Rat turned to him. "What are you doing?" Hiro ran toward the secondary control lever. Tokeo's voice had taught him that honor was burden. Now he understood. Hiro grabbed the lever with both hands and pulled it down. The gate stabilized for a final moment. A surge of energy blasted through him. He cried out, but did not let go. Maria shouted his name and tried to reach him, but the energy forced her back. Hiro looked into the gate. For 1 second, he saw Tokeo in the castle. Still standing. Still fighting. Hiro smiled through the pain. "Finish it." In the throne room, Tokeo heard him. Not through radio. Through the ether. His face tightened with grief, but he did not release Richtofen. Dempsey shouted, "Nikolai!" Nikolai hit the detonator. Nothing happened. For 1 terrible second, the world went silent. Nikolai looked at the device. "Oh, you piece of..." Richtofen laughed, wild and triumphant. Then Maria's voice came through the gate below, shouting through the collapsing signal. "Shoot the core!" Dempsey looked at the cracked throne. His rifle was broken. His pistol was empty. Tokeo's sword was shattered. Nikolai's explosive had failed. Richtofen smiled. "You lose." Then Rat appeared through the gate. Not fully. Only for a second, pulled halfway into the castle by the unstable portal, screaming in terror as he raised his rifle. "I am still a coward," he shouted. He fired. The bullet struck the explosive lodged in the throne core. Nikolai's face lit up. "Good coward." The throne exploded. Purple-white fire consumed everything. Richtofen screamed as the anchor shattered. The ether eye roared above him. The castle split apart, towers collapsing upward into the sky. Portal windows burst one by one, severing Richtofen's view of the world. Dempsey, Tokeo, and Nikolai were thrown across the throne room. Richtofen remained at the center, his body unraveling into streams of element 115 energy. He clawed at the air, trying to hold himself together. "No," he screamed. "This is mine. The ether is mine. The world is mine." The ethers will reach for him. Dempsey forced himself to stand. Not anymore. Tokeo rose beside him, bleeding heavily. "You mistook power for purpose." Nikolai staggered up on the other side. "And you built castle too high." Richtofen looked at them, hatred and disbelief twisting his face. "You think you have won? Without me holding it back, the ether will devour everything." Tokeo looked up at the eye. "No." Dempsey picked up a jagged piece of the broken throne core. "We close the wound." Nikolai looked at him. "That sounds painful." "Probably." Tokeo stepped forward. "The stabilizer needs the connection severed from this side." Dempsey looked at the collapsing castle, then at the gate flickering behind them. "No time to argue." Nikolai sighed. "I hate when there is no time to argue. I am very good at arguing." Together, the three men drove the broken core fragment into the crack beneath the throne. The ether screamed. The entire castle began folding inward. Below, the facility chamber erupted with light. Katia shouted, "The gate is closing." Maria looked into the portal, searching desperately. "Dempsey!" Through the collapsing light, she saw him. For 1 second. Dempsey looked back. He was covered in blood and dust, barely standing, but he smiled. "Get them out." Maria shook her head. "No." "Maria." His voice softened. "Live first." She remembered his words. "Live first. Thank me later." The portal began to shrink. Tokeo looked through the light and saw Hiro still holding the lever below, his body burning with ether energy. "Hiro," Tokeo said quietly. The young man smiled. Tokeo bowed his head. "Hiro, let go." The machine exploded. The gate snapped shut. The castle vanished from the sky. For a moment, the entire world went purple. Every portal across Earth closed at once. Zombies collapsed in streets, forests, tunnels, hospitals, battlefields, and homes. Some turned to ash. Some simply fell, empty at last. The storms above the cities broke apart. The impossible lights faded from the clouds. In the facility, the blast threw everyone to the ground. Maria woke to ringing silence. The chamber was ruined. The gate was dark. The stabilizer was nothing more than melted metal and smoking stone. Katia lay nearby, alive but wounded. Sergei pulled himself from beneath debris. Leon coughed, helping a child to her feet. Rat sat against a broken console, staring at his rifle in disbelief. Maria stumbled toward the gate. No. She reached the dead machine and pressed her hands against the cold metal. No, no, no. There was no light. No portal. No way through. Dempsey, Takeo, and Nikolai were gone. Above the world, Richtofen's castle was gone too. Only clouds remained. For 3 days, the world waited. No new portals opened. No dead rose. No purple storms returned. Humanity crawled out from beneath the ruins, wounded and terrified, unsure whether it had survived a war, a judgment, or the end of the world itself. In London, survivors opened church doors and found the dead outside motionless. In Moscow, soldiers walked through snow-covered streets where the undead had fallen like broken puppets. In Japan, the little girl who had wrapped Takeo's arm stood in the remains of her village and looked toward the mountains. In America, children from the subway asked Maria if Dempsey was coming back. She did not know how to answer. So she told them the truth. He saved us. Weeks passed. Then months. The world began to rebuild, though it would never be the same. Too many cities were gone. Too many families broken. Too many people had seen the sky open and the dead walk. Governments tried to bury the truth again, but this time the truth had too many witnesses. People spoke of the castle above the clouds. The doctor who believed himself a god. The dead with purple eyes. And 3 men who walked into the ether and closed the wound from the other side. Some called them heroes. Some called them myths. Some said they had died. Others said they were still out there, trapped beyond the world, keeping the ether sealed with sheer stubbornness. Maria never accepted that they were simply gone. She returned to the ruins of the facility once a year. The first year, she came alone. The second, Leon came with her. The third, Katia and Sergei joined them. Rat came too, though he insisted he only wanted to make sure nothing horrible crawled out of the ground again. At the center of the ruined chamber, where the ether gate had once opened, they built a memorial from broken stone and melted metal. No bodies were buried there. Only names. Tank Dempsey. Takeo Mosoki. Nikolai Belinsky. Hero. Dr. Abel Kramer. And all those who had held the line long enough for the world to see morning again. Maria stood before the memorial as snow fell gently through the broken ceiling. Leon stood beside her. Do you think they knew? Maria looked at the names. Knew what? That it worked. She was quiet for a long time. Then she smiled sadly. Dempsey would say he knew the whole time. Katia laughed softly. Nikolai would complain that no one saved him a drink. Sergei nodded. He would be right. Rat looked at the dead gate. And Takeo? Maria looked at the quiet stone. He would say the burden was carried. Far beyond the physical world, beyond time, beyond the reach of maps and machines, 3 figures stood in a place of endless purple twilight. The ether was no longer pouring into Earth. The wound was sealed. But not gone. It remained as a scar between worlds, watched over by those who had closed it. Dempsey stood on a floating piece of broken castle stone, staring out into the endless void. "Well," he said. "This sucks." Nikolai sat nearby, checking an empty flask for the 100th time. No drinks. No food. No comfortable chair. Afterlife is poorly managed. Takeo stood at the edge of the stone, looking into the distance. "We are not dead." Nikolai looked up. "Are you sure?" Takeo nodded. Nikolai sighed. "Unfortunate." Dempsey looked toward the sealed wound, where faint purple cracks still flickered. "So this is it? We just stand guard forever." Takeo closed his eyes. "If that is what the world requires." Nikolai stood, stretching his shoulders. "Forever is long time." Dempsey glanced at him. "You got somewhere better to be." Nikolai thought about it. "No." A faint sound echoed through the ether. A whisper. Not Richtofen. Not the ether's will. Something else moving far away. Dempsey picked up a broken rifle from the castle ruins. Takeo gripped the remains of his sword. Nikolai smiled and lifted a jagged piece of metal like a club. The three men looked into the purple darkness. Whatever was out there, it was coming. Dempsey rolled his neck. "All right then." Nikolai grinned. "One more fight." Takeo's eyes hardened. "As many as it takes." And far behind them, in the deepest silence of the sealed ether, a final fragment of Edward Richtofen drifted through the dark. Not alive. Not dead. A smile formed in the void. Tiny. Broken. Patient. The world had been denied him. His castle was gone. His throne was shattered. His empire of corpses had fallen. But Element 115 did not forget. The ether did not forget. And somewhere in the endless dark, Richtofen's whisper returned, quieter than a breath. "Not over?" The three guardians turned toward the sound. Dempsey tightened his grip. Takeo stepped forward. Nikolai laughed softly, and the ether trembled.
Nothing can break me.